welcome to Elvenhome, and this is the first update of 2017 on the building of my model railway. I think those of you who saw my last video, and welcome to the new subscribers that have joined since the last video, will have seen that I had a very long list of things that I was going to be doing over Christmas. Indeed, had I managed to do all of those things, I'm not sure I'd been in any fit state to return to work, but I was going to fix point motors, pin down the track, scratch build the buildings for my station, for the main platform at Weathertop, and put power feeds in and all sorts of things. Well, I did some of those, but not all of them. What you see in front of you is one of the things that I built whilst over Christmas. And it's amazing when you go to build these things. The actual building of this is fairly simple and fairly straightforward, but thinking about it and realizing all the various little things you've got to put in is part of the joy of doing modeling, I think, so that it looks right, and making it look right takes a lot more than initially may hit the eye. What you see here, I'll see if I can drop it down a little bit so you can get a better view of it side on. There we go. Oh, look at that power of modern technology. What you see here is what will actually become. This is half of what will become the platform buildings for Weathertop. You may remember from the last video that I was able to buy 3 of these kits for the price of 2. They're $16.50 each. I think you can get them from Hatton's for about 14. And my initial intention was simply to have this building of this length as the main building, as the only buildings on the platform. But as you'll see later, I'll put this onto the layout later. This looks rather lost on a platform that can take an engine and 8 coaches. And it occurred to me that actually you wouldn't want most of your passengers getting off the train in a totally unprotected. And looking at some pictures of big stations and how far did the platform canopies reach. There is a mix. There are some stations which have a lot of open area, but equally for an island platform it's quite common for the canopies to reach for most of the length of the station. And also when I was thinking about how do people get on and off through the platforms, you'll know that if you've seen the earlier videos that parcels and large bulky things, and indeed one imagines people who are disabled, have a ramp system where they go down and under, but it's principally for parcels. Remembering this is the end of the 1940s, early 1950s. And there are separately stairs as a subway using one of the Metcalf kits. I've made this one up. You can probably you can't really get to see the inside of it very well, I don't think. Try as I might, I couldn't work out a way to get light into this thing. But essentially, that makes up as a little kit with steps and banisters to get people below, and this part here is sunk into the platform, so the platform sits at this level. So that's how people will get off the platform, most passengers, and then there'll be the ramp that I was going to be using to get bulky objects and people who can't manage stairs. But as I said, this was originally going to be it. So then starting thinking about how you go about building, I didn't actually want stone buildings on the platform. I mentioned the Metcalf platform buildings, which are for N-gauge, are being retooled at the moment. You can't actually get them. But I rather liked the look of station buildings that I've seen all over the country. With various parts of my jobs, I've travelled all over England and Wales, and quite a bit in Scotland, but principally around England and Wales, where quite a number of the big 4 built station platform buildings out of essentially a clapboard approach, and I rather like the look of that. The only thing is that there's no one, the clapboard that I could see I didn't really like very much, and it wasn't the right colour. So I started playing around with Word, and it just shows you don't have to spend lots of money. What you have here is the building that I've created using leftover bits of Metcalf kits, in particular rather handily, because this section, these buildings here, has an office there which will be for station staff, and this is the refreshment room. And as I've built a number of the Metcalf shop and pub kits, mainly shops. I have quite a few leftover bits to allow you to build a pub if you prefer to build a pub to a shop, which was rather handy because that gave me the windows that I needed for both sides of the model. If I turn it over, you can see there. But the clapboard is simply a Word document. I created a single column table and played around with the colour till it was a colour that I liked by adjusting the faders, which you can do for shading in Word, which produced for me, if I don't know if you can see this is actually the sheet, one of the sheets, and which allowed me to think about how I do both sides, because obviously if you're building a building which is going to have lights in, as this is, you have to have the inside of the building have walls, and as you can see here, I think you can get the light into that pretty well. This has, that's probably a better idea. So you've got the red is the bottom half of the wall, and then the white takes it up to the ceiling, and then that will allow me to put lights inside, and if I can get kits with the right side for tables and chairs and people, so that when the lights are on, it actually looks sensible inside. And similarly, the need for to mask the kit a bit to put a chimney pot, because this is late 1940s. These stations would have been built long before then, where coal was the only way of heating a building, so there will be fires probably being used, coal being plentiful and cheap, particularly if you have to run a railway. But as I said, this was going to be the whole thing, and it's now only going to be half the thing. I'm going to get 3 more kits that will allow me to extend it to a 24 bay set of station buildings. And the intention eventually, when I get them in, which I'll probably get a Model Rail Scotland to get the other kits. So this is showing you the full bay. That what we have here is the first 4 bays, which is the left of the model that I've made. Then the building which has the offices and the refreshment rooms. Another empty 4 bays, which will cover the parcel ramp coming up. Then another 4 bays, which will have a building. That's probably going to be to handle the parcels and other goods traffic. And then another 2 bays empty, 4 bays which will go in as offices, and probably that's where I'll put lavatories as well, because there would be restrooms on the station, but not necessarily right up. In my experience, the gents is always as far away from the point at which you're going to get on a train as it's possible to walk. And then the last 2 bays are empty. But it was interesting doing this work because it took a lot more thinking than perhaps actually building. Initially, I was going to wrap the walls around the outside of the legs and totally enclose them. But as you may have picked up, the beauty of the work of the models, if I can bring this down, you can get some idea of just how beautiful the laser cutting is with those stanchions up there, and I thought it would be a great shame if most of those were not visible. So that's why the walls are now inside, so the tracery frames the walls, which actually I think works quite well. But it did make it a little bit trickier in cutting everything to the right size. Having the working in N-gauge, that you are down to millimeters, making a big difference. And then on the bottom, to provide a kind of edging to protect the bottom of the planking, I've just used some styrene which I've painted green and then attached to the bottom, and that really lifts the building. It really make it look quite good. So I'm quite pleased with that, and that will be the pattern that I'll use for the buildings in the other sections when they come to be built. I also mentioned in my last video that I was hoping that Santa Claus would be watching the video and buy me the coaling stage that I'm quite keen to do. It's a GWR design coaling stage, and I'm very pleased to say that Santa was indeed watching, because over here, if I do it up here first of all, just to get you a picture of what the coaling stage looks like. There we go. Make sure I can see it too. So this is the coaling stage kit. This here is where a line will come up a ramp into here, coal wagons are driven into here, and then there's a mechanism inside, usually, to tip them up that allows the coal then to form down through this chute, and that's what regulates the flow of coal into a line that would be underneath, where the tender of the engine would be put under that, and it allows you to coal very easily. Later on there were great big huge coaling towers, which I do remember seeing around Harrow and Wardstone and up towards Euston. When I was very young, I used to live on that line, and there were still steam trains running. And I do remember the coaling towers in particular before they all disappeared. But this was the way the GWR did it without giving themselves too much trouble. And the kit itself, I have to say, is very good. I'm very impressed with it. It's got quite a lot of useful detailed parts. I mean, that'll give you just an idea of the kit that's going to be done. There's some of the castings that come with it. This is white metal casting of stairs and a ladder. Getting that into focus, that looks quite good. And some other brass etched ladders and windows and things that we'll be making use of. I don't think this is going to be built very quickly or soon. I'll need to do quite a bit on the layout before I need to put this on, and that is going to take some careful time, both making sure I build it well, but also painting it and making sure it looks the right stuff once it's all done. But I'm really impressed with it. It's by a company called Mill Lane Sidings. I put it up in the last video. It's www.mill-lane-sidings.co.uk. And I'll put it up again in this video in case you want to take a note of the people that make it. This is the N gauge version. I'm pretty certain they do one in 00 gauge if you fancy having one on your layout. So that's the first part. The next part is to give you an idea of what have I been doing on the main layout, which I'll come back to you in just a minute, which includes learning a lesson for those of you that are watching this to see what mistakes you can make to avoid doing them. Part of the reason why I didn't do as much in terms of wiring the layout is that I had to pin a large part of the layout down twice, and I will tell you shortly why it was that I ended up doing it twice. Hello and welcome back. As you can see, I've put the station building now onto the platform. So you can see how it's positioned, and you begin to get an idea of why I decided that even though it's 12 bays long, it's just not long enough for the platform. That's actually in the position that it's going to be sitting as half the canopy. But if I pan along, you'll just see how much of the train would be without any cover. So people getting off at the train up at this engine end would be pelting down to get under cover if it was raining. So I think it does need to be twice the length, and there would be more station buildings for a station of this size. I mean, obviously I've removed the station buildings that sit this side of those two tracks you can see. But you can see here, if I go in, that's the subway on the far left side, and that white section that you can see there is sunk below the platform. So that will be flush, and the people will come up straight down under cover between the two lines. We can put some, I'll be putting some benches and goodness knows what else under those first 4 canopies before you hit the station building and the buffet, the platform buffet. And then, as I said, roughly where the train is roughly level with where the ramp is in the other station building that I've removed. And so I can put a ramp coming up here, which means that the buildings that I should be putting in from this point about here will be the ones that will handle parcels and goods and whatever else is being offloaded off the train. And then some more buildings which will be offices and laboratories, and that will take the canopy up, I would think, to about here by the time we're finished. And that I think will look just about right. But as you can see, from that engine that's there's plenty of clearance, even though those canopies come out very slightly above the platform, as you'd expect them to do. So I'm very, very pleased with how that's coming on. Before I come on to my warning, for those of you just about to embark upon track pinning, Santa was also very kind. Not only did I get the coaling stage, but I got this set of Dapol B-set coaches, Often used on lots of branch lines, just a little set of coaches that you can attach the engine to either way, and they'll quite happily run away. So which will be a nice alternative to the auto coach, which should be with me very soon. Farish or Bachmann were saying that they expect it February, March, so the auto coach will be here soon. And that will look good with the pannier, which, as you know, is quite a favourite of mine. But they really do look good, and I think it's important in every one of these videos that some trains run at some point. So we just come out a little bit, we'll get that train running. Oh, no, we won't get it running backwards, that's not a very good idea. And I guess I've managed to get it to the point where it can't get any power. There we go. And going up to what is becoming something of a store yard for me. It's a very good place to store engines that I don't want to move or me to clout. So what's tucked up there at the moment, if I go in a little bit further just so you can get a good view of them, is the Royal Scot, which was the engine I mentioned you saw hurtling round when it's running in, which I think is a beautiful engine, and the J39, which was stood in splendid isolation, having not yet been chipped. That has now been chipped, and that's sitting up there as well, quite happily. I'm very impressed actually that the train's managed to get all the way up there, where the only droppers are pretty much where that train started from, is the only power to that whole section of track. I mean, I will put more droppers in there because I don't want to just rely on that, but it's not causing any problem at all in terms of power and running. So the warning, which I've been mentioning. Part of the reason why I didn't do so much over Christmas as I intended is that I had this whole area on the corkboard here from pretty much where those pliers are straight down, right away to the end of the wooden section where the polystyrene starts again. All the track on there now is permanently fixed down. It's all been pinned and put in place. And I'd finished pinning it and putting it in place and was really pleased because it's all very firm, and it is indeed very firm. It's not going to move, and the trains ran over it very smoothly. There was no joins where one or other of the lines had popped out of the fish plate or not connected properly, so you would have a potential derailment. And then I thought, right, good, now I can put the joiner sleepers in. And joiner sleepers, if I use this set of points to show you, as you can see from this set of points, at the end of those points, this is a set of points that I'm going to be using up at High Elven, there are two little joiner sleepers attached at the end, and there's another one at the bottom there. And that came on all the points, and there were 4 for the double slips. And the purpose of those is that they slide under the connectors that you use to connect the track, the fish plates, the joiners, to whatever you're hooking onto there. But if you have already pinned everything down, they don't slide anywhere. They most certainly do not slide under the track. So having pinned everything down and been very pleased with myself, everything had to come back up again, which was really very, very annoying. And then I had to put the joiner sleepers under, and they're much more fiddly to do than you would think, particularly where you've got lots of points in close proximity. Because those joiner sleepers sort of assume that each, if we look where you've got all this point work here, you will have to cut those joiner sleepers at the ends to get everything to fit in. So it took some manipulating, and that took a long time. Once I got, not least because I had to get all the pins out, which I'd very, very well put in. But I am really pleased with it. It's worked really well. I've run coaches now. I can run coaches all the way around. I can't, or yet run trains because there's no power in that middle section, partly because I also need to be able to switch polarity on the frogs. If I tried to run trains over some of these points, almost certainly I would have a short circuit at some point. So getting a complete circuit is dependent on getting the point motors and the wiring and that done. But that took second place to getting the track fixed down. And actually, although the building eventually, as I designed it, is quite simple to make now, actually the business of designing it and getting it to work and getting it to look good took quite a long time. But that's the nature of the hobby. You learn as you go along, and I have learned a great deal. The only other thing that I've done since you were here last is that this little board that sits on the side here, which is where, if you remember, I had drilled a 50mm hole so that the point motor would be attached right into the point and then dropped straight through the hole. But you have to be so precise cutting those holes. We are dealing at end gauge here, so you know, a millimetre out makes a big difference. And try as I might, I couldn't quite get it right for those 3 points with 3 big 50mm holes that all the points would fit together neatly. So in the end, I put a new top piece on, put some cork on the top, which has already been done, has also been done. And now I've drilled holes actually under all of these points. All the points are down, and there are holes for where the point motors will come through. So we're ready to start wiring and doing point motors. The pace at which I'll be able to do that is inevitably now limited by my being at work, at least only for the next 6 months, because I've decided I'm going to retire early from the civil service. So come the second half of the year, I shall have plenty more time to do to work on the railway. I think that's about all for this update. Probably the next update will be in about a month's time, just before I get off to Model Rail Scotland. And I'm certainly hoping by that time to have wired up the point motors on this section, this little board which I'm showing you now. And if I can, and I've been promising this so many times, over there that board still has to have cork put on it. And that has the final double slip, which I really do want to get wired and working, because then we'll be able to get access to the station and everything. And there's more cork to go down. There's the track over here, which most of which will be under a tunnel eventually, still needs to be put on cork. And there is cork to go up the incline. Because the aim, I think, by the time I come to retire, is that by then, with a bit of luck, I'll be ready to start building High Elven, which will sit probably about 3/4 of this area here. Let's come out of it. Will be under the hill. I haven't quite made my mind up how much yet, and that's one of the things that I'm sort of working on. But it'll be under a hill with a station up at the top, High Elven. That's where the incline is moving to, and a little goods shed. But I think that's more than enough for this update. Thanks very much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again in about a month's time. Thanks very much. Bye bye.